Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Katkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Hello and welcome to another Live Connections webinar. It's Tuesday, May 25th, 2021, and I'm your host, Angela Zender. I'm so happy that you're all joining us tonight, whether it's through YouTube or Facebook Live, or you're a Connections member. Please participate. You can use the comments section, you can ask us questions, and they'll be answered live on the air. So without further ado, let's be joined by Dr. Ray and Jean, and they are going to discuss tonight some of the hidden advantages of being in a relationship.
Hi. Hey. Hi, Ange. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you for joining me for another Connections webinar.
Yes, thanks for joining us too.
Yes, good morning's good because I feel like today I am drawing from daytime television, talk shows, right?
There you go.
Oh, been inspired by daytime talk shows.
Do you know what today is, Ange?
No.
No. Today is National Wine Day.
It is?
Yes.
Wow.
We are
Cheers.
Vibing with a little wine there and celebrating National Wine Day. Yes. If not for Facebook, how would we know what day it is, right? Or whose birthday it is, right? It's
all made up.
It's all made up, right? So today we are talking about a really fun topic, right? The hidden advantages of being in a committed relationship.
Probably a happy one too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. A committed, healthy relationship. Yes. That's very, very specific, right?
Yes.
Because you could be in a committed, unhealthy relationship, and that's not really going to be an advantage.
No.
Hey, Tina, yay for National Wine Day. Yes. Thanks for joining us. Yes, and as you guys know, we were out of town last week because our son graduated from college, and we are very, very proud parents. So, yay. And welcome again to another Couple Synergy weekly webinar. Thanks so much for joining us today. The topic, advantages, hidden advantages of being in a committed, healthy relationship. I wonder if any of you could guess what some of those hidden advantages are. I think everyone has heard about people who are married live longer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that actually is the case. There are some studies that do show that couples who are in a healthy marriage, they do live longer than single people. And it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of different reasons for that. There's a lot of physical reasons for that. And that's some of the things that we're going to go into, which are hidden mostly, right?
Well, from my experience, this is a little bit off the beaten path, but, I was discussing with one of my clients yesterday about she's going back into the dating world in her 50s. And it's interesting to have her try to figure out post-COVID, like, how do you meet people? You have to worry about what you're wearing and where you're going. And it's one thing that I really like about being in a relationship.
You don't have to worry about that.
I don't have to worry about it.
Yes, right. And this day and age, when people doing the online dating stuff and the apps and everything, I'm just more power to you. Really, I really feel for you guys because we met each other before that was a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
So from what we hear, it's an adventure. But I particularly do not miss the days of going out at night and wondering if that was going to be the day I was going to potentially meet,
me,
my partner. So I love that hidden advantage, including, some days just don't feel like taking a shower. So that's a hidden advantage that I appreciate.
That you don't have to take a shower sometimes?
Yep.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
impress you, or try to.
Well, you don't have to impress me. I'm impressed already.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's not anything you have to do.
Right.
So, one of the advantages or hidden advantages has to do with the chemical dopamine.
Mhm.
All right. And we have talked about dopamine in the past and how it is that neurotransmitter in our brain that makes us feel really good. Right. It is the, in the reward center of our brain, it is what makes us be active. It's what makes us feel alert. It is what makes us feel really awesome in a committed, healthy relationship and alive. And, some of the benefits of dopamine is that it helps us also sleep better. And so people who are in a committed, healthy relationship, they have reported having better sleep when they're sleeping next to their partner. All right. And so throughout this all, we're going to really throw in that caveat, though, that it is a healthy relationship. Okay. Because if you're sleeping next to a partner and your relationship is very strained, then it is going to affect your sleep in the opposite direction. All right. So all of these advantages that we're talking about, think about what the counterpart is on the unhealthy side.
Yeah. Sleeping worse.
Sleeping worse. Right.
Unless you're mad.
And then you sleep in a different bedroom.
And you sleep terribly that night if you
Right.
sleep at all.
Or you sleep on the couch. Right. Another one of the hidden advantages is the hormone oxytocin.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And oxytocin is what helps us bond to other human beings. Right. It's typically the main neurotransmitter that's involved with bonding between a mother and an infant. But it is also the main neurotransmitter that is part of sexual connection and bonding with your intimate, committed partner. And so when you have a healthy relationship, there is an influx of oxytocin in our system. And that's what makes us feel connected. It's what makes us feel closer to each other. And it also adds to more health benefits as well.
I would think that as a child, if you were brought up in a way that maybe there was some neglect or some loneliness or some pain, which is pretty common in childhood for most people, that being in a relationship for a very long time, just having a person who is willing to walk on this earth with you and see you through all of the different stages and changes of life, create something really special that heals that disconnect that you get, as a child. Because, as a child, that's what you do. You are born, and from that moment, you are trying to walk away from your parents instead of bond and stay, in their basement. So
well, yes. I mean, that's the goal, right? Is to grow up, become independent, and to leave the nest.
So when you see people that are married 60 years, you always see a certain expression on their face that you don't see in any other human being. And when they look at each other, there is just this energy that lights up in between them. And, on the podcast, we've interviewed a few couples that, were at that longevity, but you see it. It's an amazing thing because, they feel pretty safe in the world. They feel pretty secure. They feel so much less wounded or like life is so difficult, which, when you're alone, it's harder. I think it's harder, especially for, the concept of the dependent paradox. And we've talked about this before. Dependent paradox is when we just feel better trying new things when we're with our person. or another person, so it's easier to walk into a party with a wing person than by yourself. It's easier to try something new, and all of those kind of things. We're much more likely to take the courage and the challenge to do something different and new if we have a person with us.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that leads to lower stress
Mm-hmm.
and lower stress levels. There's a study in University of Chicago that actually shows that married couples, and again, healthy married couples, have lower cortisol levels. All right. And we have to kind of explain what cortisol is. When we are under stress as a human being, we emit initially epinephrine and adrenaline, and these hormones are emitted by the brain, and they help us deal with the stressor, right? So it gets our body prepared to handle whatever the stressor is that we're facing. So it elevates our heart rate, it elevates our blood pressure, respiration. It is basically shunting all the blood to our extremities to get us ready to fight, to run away, or to freeze, right? And to deal with this threat or stressor that's in front of us. Now, those neurotransmitters are very short-lived, right? So they leave the body very quickly after about 24 hours. But what happens is that if the stressor continues beyond 24 hours, and now it is a continued stressor, what happens is our adrenal glands start to emit cortisol. And cortisol is like a long-term acting hormone in our body, and it does the same thing as adrenaline, but it is designed to last longer in the body. And it does the same thing as I said. It increases our heart rate, respiration, blood pressure. It shuts down all of the non-essential functions, bodily functions that are going on, like reproduction. It slows down digestion. It really gets the body prepared to deal with what that stressor is, to run away, to fight, or to flee. Okay. Now, there's some long-term ramifications for cortisol. When we have it in our body for a long period of time, it starts to attack our body, starts to deteriorate our body, especially in our digestion system. We start to have more stomach problems and digestion problems. We might develop stomach ulcers. It does affect cardiac tissues as well. And it can also lead to cancer in its extreme. So we want to really look at that because, when you are in an unhealthy relationship, you are actually going to have larger amounts of cortisol within your system because you're under this constant pressure of this stressor of being in an unhealthy relationship. Okay. The counterpart is that if you are in a healthy one, you have less of that and you feel less stress and you feel more connected and you have all the oxytocin in your system and the dopamine, so you feel happier in your life.
Yeah, and it actually increases your immune system.
It does. It absolutely does. Obviously, if we feel stressed, our immune system takes a hit and we are less able to deal with any illness that comes into our system and fight off illness. But when we are happier, we have a stronger immune system and we're able to fend off a lot of those things.
Yep.
Yes.
So what about if you have a heart attack or heart surgery?
Heart attack and heart surgery. So there was a study that was done. I'm trying to remember which university, but I don't remember right off the bat. But there was a study that was done about people who had heart surgery. And it was shown, the study showed that people that had a committed, healthy partnership or healthy relationship, they were 3 times as likely to survive the surgery after a 3-month period. Now that's pretty significant, right? It really points to the fact that having a strong partner by your side helps you survive a very invasive and potentially life-threatening surgery, right?
That's some pretty big statistics.
That's really, really big. It's really significant and it really shows how important our relationship, our primary relationship is. We've always said in past podcasts or webinars that the most important and most challenging thing you will ever have to do in your life is have a committed relationship with your primary partner. Yeah.
Another great benefit, right, is, and we've talked about this before, but accountability. So people who are in a committed relationship tend to make better decisions because someone's watching. And we're all like that, right? We all, give ourselves more of a pass when no one's looking. And so when you have a person that you have to be accountable to with how you're spending your money, what you're eating, what you're doing with your time, all of those things lead to making better decisions.
What you're drinking.
Lead to make better decisions about your life. And so they, the financial security is possibly better.
Yep.
Depending on who you are as a person. And also the feeling of purpose, of feeling like your life has a point and that you have someone to care for and you have someone who cares for you, that there's more purpose and meaning in life when you have that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, again, a lot of these studies, they are focused on a healthy relationship and the benefits of that. But you can see how if someone is not working on their relationship, they're not actively working on improving the relationship and changing in a positive direction, how that is going to really be detrimental to all facets of your life, right? Not just your health, right? But the connection that you feel with your partner and your home environment. The home environment should feel comfortable. It should feel safe. It should feel freeing, right? It should be a sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of couples, it isn't.
Right.
A lot of times what they feel when they feel most free is when they are at work and when they're able to escape their home environment because, maybe there is too much, arguing, that's going on in the environment.
So another, and this I would think is the most hidden thing or advantage, is you have someone who's paying attention. And when someone's paying attention, they can tell if you're going through something. And typically when we're going through something, we feel the weight of that, the heaviness of that. And we might not always notice that if someone doesn't kind of pay attention and say, hey, I noticed that your eating habits have changed, or you're not sleeping as well, or you're more moody or something. And then what that does is allows for an opportunity for healing to come up. And there is a large amount of potential healing that can happen in a healthy relationship. And, obviously that's a lot about what we teach people how to do.
Mm-hmm.
But,
and we're not talking about someone paying attention like monitoring.
Like stalking you.
like monitoring. What is it that you're eating?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be eating that. Or, did you take your medication today? We're not talking about a partner who is being almost a parent, okay? Because that's the parent-child relationship. We've talked about that in the past, about how that creates this power differential in a relationship. What we're talking about here is being a witness, okay? And you're being a witness to your partner. You are, helping them really just be in this world, right? And you are part of that with them. Hi.
So, hi, I have a follow-up question to that. So
Cool.
You're talking about one of the hidden advantages being someone paying attention, and attention is one of the essential needs for all human beings.
Yep.
So how long, in general, does a committed relationship have to be for you to get that from your partner, and vice versa, give it to your partner, that attention you're talking about?
So we have talked about developmental stages of relationships. And so in the beginning of a relationship, it's very new and there is very little invested in the beginning of a relationship. So, you can have differing opinions with your partner and, still be able to have respect for them and love them and like them and whatnot. But as a relationship starts to develop, that's when the investment becomes greater and the risk of being rejected and abandoned becomes greater as well. right? So what we're talking about here is when the benefits, when that risk starts to increase, the investment starts to increase, that is when the benefits start to increase as well, right? And that's only if a relationship is, they're working on it and it's a healthy one, versus a relationship that's stagnated at being a parent-child.
If you think about anything in life that you're trying to master, and relationship is a process of mastery, and you're being taught some new skill, or you're doing something you've never done before, like a new job or a new sport, and it feels really awkward and uncomfortable and uncertain, and sometimes very frustrating. And then at some point, there's a breakthrough. At some point, there's this moment where you get it and you're like, oh, and it falls into place. And I would say for couples, this is probably between the 5 and 7 year mark, where one of them has the courage to finally say, I'm not happy. Something isn't quite right with us. And they have the courage to have that difficult conversation. And what they have at the other end of that, if it goes well, is a deeper connection with their partner. And they learn that skill of, oh, the more vulnerable I become and the more open I become and the more I share things that that I'm uncertain about in myself or are uncomfortable for me, the greater benefit I would have of feeling more connected and closer to my partner if they treat me with kindness and care and work on that with me. And so it's a really long game. And I would say, probably even up until like the 20-year mark, where you really have been doing that dance a long enough time where you're noticing those subtle nuances and you're really able to, before there's a big blow up or a problem. So I think the blow up and problems are easier. They happen first before the healing part.
Of course. Yeah.
Before you learn to be more careful with each other and stop taking it personally and stop making assumptions and try to make it more about what they're experiencing or going through than how it's impacted you, which is where that deep level of healing can take place.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then it's fun to pay attention to your partner instead of scary.
And I just wonder, do you think, so you're talking about it could be the 5 to 7 mark, right? Do you think that whenever there those blow-ups, let's say in year 1, initial, right? Those blow-ups are about much different things, many different things compared to year 7, right? And arguably in hindsight, the first year, the blow-ups were about smaller things. And now year 7, because there's changes in life and there's changes in a relationship, that year 7 and beyond, there's much bigger things that now the little things don't matter as much or they're resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. In the beginning, you think about this merger. It's like if two companies were coming together and they were trying to merge, they're trying now to, in the beginning, trying to figure out what is the basic structure of how we are going to combine and come together, right? So how are we going to work our finances, right? How are we going to, create our home together? How are we budgeting? The things that people are merging in the beginning are very, small and structural. But as you start to invest more, the 5 to 7 year mark, now you're dealing with a lot of stuff that you've brought from your past, from your childhood, from your, the caregivers that raised you and everything, all your beliefs, about what it means to be a man in this world, what it means to be a woman in this world, and your beliefs about why we're here and what happens after we die. And these are really big ticket items that now start to permeate within your relationship. And especially when you start to have kids, now you have to start talking about these big ticket items because you have to agree on how you're going to raise your children together, what you're going to teach them, and you have to be on the same page with that.
And then you grow. And then as you grow, you want to reinvent yourself, and you might not be so satisfied at your job and need support in order to change careers or to maybe become healthier, or maybe someone like a parent or something passes away or gets sick and you have that stressor. And so all throughout life, there's different things that kind of spark growth and spark stressors and those kind of things that help you dig deeper. And the deeper you dig, the more surface you create to have that connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that we've heard from a lot of clients is that, we wish that this was taught in school, right? And in the beginning, they don't really realize that they only know what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to really dissect the relationship, you start taking a look at, how you are coming together. There's a lot of subconscious processes that are at place that if we are not aware of it, then we can't attend to it. We can't correct them. And then what happens is that we start to repeat the same things that we were taught from our primary caregivers, right? And from our upbringing and what we had learned subconsciously about how a relationship is supposed to be, which may or may not be good, right? And most often it is not going to work for the specific relationship that you are in. And so every single couple has to go through a transition period, right? And this transition requires a lot of work, and it is not painless at all.
If you think about your childhood, and if I'm just going to talk about the home I grew up in the home I grew up in, we had dinner every night at 6:30. 6:30 was dinner time. You were expected to be at the table. Everyone was there unless you were working or part of a sporting event or something. But you were expected to gather, sit, have dinner together. We didn't answer the phone. And so why would I ever think that somebody might have dinner at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Or why would I think some people would not even sit at the table and have dinner in front of the TV? Or there's some families where they feed the kids first and they eat later, the adults. And you don't know that because you only experience what you experience as a child. And then when you get together with a partner who is raised in a different home with different, schedules and traditions, that's when you start to see it. That's when you start to say, oh, there's another way, there's a difference. And I think sometimes that's the advantage of being a child from a divorced family. Because when you're growing up in an intact family and they have a certain way of doing things your entire childhood, at least I did, I thought that's just the way the world was everywhere in all the houses. But when you have parents who've separated, now there's two households, and you go, oh, well, I could be like this, or I could be like this, or possibly there's even a third option. And a marriage is also always a blending of two things that come together to make a third option. And in the beginning of a relationship, that's where the rough edges are. And those rough edges are the things that that have this opportunity to have to take a look at, well, why did your family do it this way? And why did your family do it that way? And what's going to work for us? And then you really start to, because every decision we make is based on a feeling, then you have to tap into your feelings like, yeah, why, how do we want to set things up? And so you get to, be part of creating traditions. And I see this a lot with people who have to go through a big change, and they're like, well, it's no longer going to be Christmas like this, or Thanksgiving like this, or whatever is the holiday. And they don't realize that was made up too. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you might have done it your whole life, but at some point there was a first time that was done. And so part of the beauty of blending and merging and creating is finding your own traditions of adding meaning and significance to things, which is really important, especially if you are trying to merge as a couple or as a blended family.
So that is also one of the hidden advantages, is that the feeling of freedom, of creating together, and not being bound to what you were taught or what the traditions are supposed to be, from your family or from your partner's family. And so when you try to create and merge together, that brings about that closer bond, that brings about that feeling of connectedness, and it feeds on itself. When you start feeling connected and more, close to your partner, you want to do more things that's going to bring up more of those feelings, and you're going to also impart that upon your kids and your immediate family. And so then every tradition that is created, between the two of you and now imparted with your kids and within your family is something that is going to now resonate throughout the generations.
So, one of the questions that I asked in the comment section is if you had to describe what you learned about relationships from your childhood in 2 words, what words would you use? So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Ray and Jean, to think up 2 words. And since I asked the question, I'll go first. And we love that people are commenting. So I would say concerning relationships, one thing that I learned was spontaneity. Being spontaneous is okay, and it happens often. And another thing, I'm searching for the best word, but I would say that yelling is part of relationships. Those are 2 things I learned. Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword there, Ange, right? It could be yelling could be a good thing. It could be, because you're able to express things and not keep things inside, but then also it could be a bad thing too, right? Depending on what you're yelling, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you 2 have your 2 words, after you share them, I'll share what our viewers say.
Go ahead.
I'm still trying to synthesize it into 2 words, really. That if I could use one of my words as work hard, so I'm putting 2 words into one. Work hard is probably one thing that I learned, about relationships, growing up, and then probably the second one is is probably not a good thing, but I'm going to put a phrase into one word: keep things to yourself. All right. So, and I'm saying these 2 things not from a positive perspective. All right. Because working hard could be a good thing, that you're working hard within your relationship. But really what I was taught was that you work hard for your relationship. You go to work, you do not only 9 to 5, you do 9 to 10, right? You do 9 till midnight. You work as hard as you can because you're doing that for your relationship. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but that's what I learned. And the other thing is keep things to yourself, right? And so if you are hurt or you're angry, you bottle that up inside and you fume, right? And you don't really express that, to your partner until you explode. That unfortunately was something I learned about relationships, which is not a good thing, right? And no fault to my parents. My parents learned what they learned, right? And they are fallible people, as all of us are, okay? But it really gave me a good template to work from and to really learn how to have a healthy relationship and how to actually undo some of those things that I was taught. Well, what are your 2 words that you learned?
This is such a tough thing.
It is tough. That's why I couldn't come up with one word. I had to put a phrase in.
I want to say that one thing that I learned is that, and it's not a word, it's more a phrase, but that if you have the money, you have the power, right? Yeah. So that was an important thing to me growing up. If I wanted something, I had to earn it. I had to go out and get money and I had to go get it. The basics were provided for, but if you wanted something else, you had to go do that at a very young age, and to really take responsibility. I think responsibility was really big for yourself and for, I think there was a lot of concern for how you impacted other people in the world and had to be thoughtful of other people, regardless if other people were thoughtful towards you. Mm-hmm. And I don't think my parents ever tested or decided to go beyond their roles, of the really traditional roles of, my mom home and my
Staying
dad
home
working and that kind of stuff. And so I don't know if I saw too much that was I think the messages were more silent than they were like verbal and out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Angela, you are absolutely correct there, right? That working hard came up for both of you. It's no surprise that, like attracts like, right? And so, even though, we come from two different cultural backgrounds, there were some very, similar messages that our parents conveyed to us, right? And, we have said in the past that relationships today are much harder than they were back then, right? Because there are so much more considerations that have to be made. That now it's very common that it's, two people, it's a two job household.
Yeah.
Right. And both people are working parents and then trying to, juggle taking care of the kids and taking care of the home together. There aren't any defined roles anymore. Now the roles are much more fluid and couples have to be very dynamic and they have to juggle, a lot of things together as a unified couple and not in any type of hierarchy and not in any type of defined roles, right?
Another interesting thing to think about is we get our genetics from both of our parents, right? And so you get half from one and half from the other, and you become this unique display of your genetics, of however that is. And if you have siblings, they share some of those characteristics and some they don't. And the same thing is true, I've heard of, like a psychological inheritance, so to speak. And so when I think about that, and what you want to think about is, how would you use one word to describe your dad that's positive, and one word to describe your dad that's negative, and one word that describes your mom as positive, and one word that describes her as negative. And you will see that blend inside of you. And, the way I see that is like my dad was like, he was a pretty big personality, and he was very much someone who would go and talk to people and put himself out there.
That's not like you at all.
And my mom was someone who was very kind, very, very considerate of other people, very much in service and taking care of things. And I used to see myself more as my dad, and now as I'm older, more like my mom, but I see that blend.
Absolutely.
You see that? What would you say for your parents?
My dad was very much a kind of a calming presence. He was a stoic person, but when he spoke to people, he really made them felt very calm and relaxed and welcomed. And my mother was very much a spontaneous person, right? Wanting to try new things and, being an excitable type of person. And so I would say that, yes, I am able to kind of balance both. Sometimes I have a clear hat that I take on and change. Ange can attest to that, but
yeah.
But yeah, I think I've done a pretty good job of trying to blend the two. Yeah.
How about you, Ange?
Well, okay, this is perfect. Give me about 10 seconds to think about it, because to the original question about 2 words that you learned, what you learned from your childhood about relationships, here's some of our lovely comments.
Love yourself. That's awesome. And service and commitment. That's sounds very dutiful.
And then concerning the traditions, creating things of your own in a relationship. This is a great one from Eric. Thank you, Eric.
If anybody has listened to not the last podcast, the podcast before that, Eric was on that podcast.
Eric and Tina.
And they talked about road trip roulette, which we absolutely endorse. It's a really fun thing for couples to do. Absolutely. And families too. So you can have a couples road roulette, right? Road roulette. Yeah. And you can have a family road roulette too, which is really fun. We're not going to go into that. You listen to the podcast and you'll hear the exact description of how they do it, which is really cool.
So, it's difficult for me. The question, what was it? A word to describe your parents that you've taken on that you can see in yourself?
Yeah, like if you had to say one, like if we just go with the positive, which is what we went with, what would be like one of your dad's best characteristics and one of your mom's best characteristics?
That's phrased. Now I better understand it. Okay. My dad, one of his best characteristics, honest, blunt, right? And being blunt is pure honesty, I'd like to think. And then one of my mom's best characteristics, I would say she is creative, very creative. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
And now what?
And now you look at yourself and what part of you became someone that's blunt and creative, someone that's boldly honest and creative person.
Oh, okay.
So it's like that's what you hear from them.
Yeah. And I think as I grow, and I let go of more insecurities and anxiety, I'm stepping more into that. Being honest / blunt and being a little bit more brave.
Creative in how you are blunt. How about that?
Okay, sure. That's great. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, and look, we've got a great comment.
Yeah. Oh, Angela, hardworking for your dad, both positive and dedicated, and selfless for my mom. Not sure if they're positive, negative, or both. All of these characteristics, they have the sacred side and they have shadow sides, right? But it's really important for us to really understand, what characteristics that we have really incorporated into ourselves, and then how that interacts with our partner's characteristics, right? In creating this common structure, this common vision together, right?
And Angela, I would say that really describes you. You're a very, hardworking, dedicated, person who gives very selflessly. And yes, we always are trying to find the balance of those two things.
Right.
And that's an interesting kind of perspective that we can have. And and check that out with your partner too. Like how did they see their parents? And they may not even realize, there's like that joke of like, don't turn into your parents.
Yeah.
Don't become your mother. And we can't help it.
Yeah. So, this is kind of bordering on one of the other hidden advantages of being in a healthy, committed partnership. And that is that you get to learn a perspective of yourself that you couldn't learn otherwise from anyone else, right? Your partner is your closest mirror. They will be able to reflect back a perspective that you couldn't have on your own, right? And in learning that other part of ourselves, it helps us grow. Think about all of the Olympic athletes out there. They all have coaches. Even though they're the best athletes in the world, they can't see a perspective of themselves when they're in it. And that is for their coach to be able to provide that outside perspective. And when you have a healthy relationship, you can be that witness and mirror for each other and help each other kind of grow beyond and break through the glass ceilings that we will always hit as an individual, as a single person.
What do you call those mirrors that you can see through?
Oh, they're two-way mirrors.
Two-way mirrors.
Yeah.
I think our eyes are like that. Our eyes are like two-way mirrors. And when someone's kind of at a distance, they see themselves reflected, but they think they're looking at you, but they're seeing themselves reflected. But when you are in a really, really long-term relationship, the closer you get, the eyes that we see with that our mirrors become two-way and the person can see inside of us
Mm-hmm.
and know us at this depth, just like we can see inside of them once we get past our own reflection, our own, what's being reflected back, and we look a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. It's like a two-way mirror, which is absolutely one of the hidden benefits of being in a relationship.
And Eric is kind of learning some of those perspectives too. He's got some of his words for his mom: loving and confrontational, it's good and bad. And then dad is open-minded and abusive. Well, and stepdad, giving and isolation. All of these perspectives and all of these, characteristics that we learn, that we are exposed to, we bring into our committed partnership, right? They almost, what happens is that we learn them, they stay dormant, right? And they stay dormant until we get into a committed partnership. And once we're in that partnership, they start to come to the surface, right? And it's only because, when we go deeper into our partnership, into vulnerability, that's when we start to unlock a lot of the things, a lot of these characteristics that are kind of residing in that place. And so it's inevitable that we start to, take a look at these things and bump into them and are challenged to heal them and to grow from them, right?
I just want to add one thing before meditation. Is that what you were going to say?
Oh,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
think so.
Okay. So one thing, just concerning that last hidden advantage about being a mirror, right? And knowing each other very closely. And then Dr. Ray, you use the example of a coach, right? So this is the segue, because this is not about being in a relationship with your partner, but rather today I got the question. And the question was, what is the difference between marriage counseling and what Dr. Ray and Jean do in Couple Synergy? And do you want to know how I answered it?
Yeah, I want to hear that. Yeah.
Because I, as you both do, I like to use metaphors. Sometimes that gives the feeling that I want to evoke that my explanation cannot. So the metaphor I used was something like, if you want to learn how to play golf, there's multiple ways to do that, to be good at golf, right? And here's 3 such options. And what I want you to do is think about what option might fit you the best if you want to learn how to play golf and be good at it. So option number 1 is you could read this book I have from 1975, and it's got about 200 pages, and it was written in the past, and it tells you exactly how to play golf. Option number 2 is you could go on YouTube and watch about 10 different videos, and they were made in different parts of the world, but none of the people on the videos are professional golfers themselves or coaches. And the videos range from being 2 minutes long to, an hour long. So you can watch someone else tell you how to play golf. And then option number 3 is you can take an hour a week for 6 weeks and go to the golf course and meet one-on-one with an instructor who's been playing golf for about 25 years, who has coached multiple people. Some of them are professional golfers, who really loves golf themselves. And not only will they play golf with you, but they'll tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and how to fix it. So out of those 3 options, which one do you think is the best option for you?
I think the book from 1975.
That's what we learned from our parents.
And I would say that's the difference. Maybe a lot of people would say option number 3 is the best. That would be the best for me. And it's that kind of attention and quality and instruction that you get in Couple Synergy with you too.
Absolutely. And, we take it, we actually use an example of a personal trainer.
Oh, okay.
right? And so, if a person is going to a personal trainer because, they just they want to get off of the couch, maybe they're having some health issues, and their doctor says you need to start moving, you need to start changing your life, otherwise you're going to die. They're going to go to a personal trainer. Personal trainer is going to really kind of tailor, to working on where they're at with their health, right? Getting out of dysfunction. And if someone maybe they broke their leg and now they are going to a personal trainer, because now they have to change the way they do things, right? The way that they did things before doesn't work. And because of that, now they have to learn a different way of becoming healthy and being able to walk in the right way and exercise in the right way. And then you have people that go to a personal trainer because, they want to run their second marathon. They want to maybe train now for a triathlon. And so that kind of work now is very different, right? And it has to be tailored in that way.
Right? To optimize, not just learn basic skills.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, when it comes to the Lighthouse and the clinicians that we have trained there to do marriage counseling and the work that we do in couple synergy, we're able to see couples in that whole gamut, right? And people who are maybe getting off the couch for the first time, or broken their leg, they need to really work at some basics, and that is where marriage counseling steps in, right? Kind of healing the dysfunction, and then getting them to a place that they can start to look at training for a marathon, right? So I like that. Ange. Cool. I like this kind of came through here. I just want to pop this in here. So to be clear, no golf lessons though, right? That's funny. Very funny. Yes. All right. Yeah. So we have a
meditation.
Meditation.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I think we're going.
So get into a dignified position, which means straighten out your spine. You can sit comfortably, but you want that energy to flow. And with your next exhalation, just gently close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you're standing at the far end of a very large room. And this room is a beautiful room, like a grand ballroom from the 1800s, with paintings and lots of ornate details. And at the far end of the room is a full-length mirror. And from where you are in your perspective, you mostly see the room in the mirror and a small version of yourself. And as you're noticing all the details around you, begin walking closer to the mirror. And watch as the details fade away and your presence becomes larger and fills up the mirror until you see your whole self just a few feet away. And you can only see some of the details of the room in the corners, above you, below you, and around you. And take another step closer until you're just a foot away and look into your eyes and really see yourself reflected back. Your hair, your skin, the color of your eyes, the symmetry of your face. Notice the expression on your face. Notice your posture. And just take a moment to really observe the body that you're in. And from this perspective, you start to wonder, who's in there? Your body is yours, but it is not you. And lean into the mirror a little more until you're just 1 inch away. And all you can really focus on are your eyes. And you can see through them. And what gets reflected back is actually what's inside of you. And you begin to wonder at the great being that you are, who you might be outside of this body, beyond the room, beyond the earth. And as you look deep inside, you have a beautiful reflection of the history of your life, the bruises, the bumps, and the beauty. And from this very strange perspective, you're able to see yourself from such a larger view. A choice of a great soul, having a human experience with limited time and limited opportunity on the earth. And as you're looking at the history of the life you're living, you see how much was chosen for you, where you lived, what you learned, the culture that surrounds you, the belief systems that were ingrained in you. But you see a perspective of yourself even before being in this body. And you realize that those too are yours, but they're not you. Your beliefs, your experiences, your perspective. And take a moment to look in the other direction, as though you can look through the mirror and into the future, where you can consciously create the experiences you'd like to have, the impact you would like to make on the earth, and the connection you'd like to have with other people. The things on this earth you'd like to see, how you want to become, and who you want to grow into while you're here on this earth, which is a place of evolution and growth. Who you are beyond the experience, beyond the possessions, beyond the culture. And now imagine yourself taking a step backward until you can see yourself again in that beautiful room. And notice the difference that you feel inside, even though everything outside of you is still the same. Feel that connection to yourself as a great creator, capable of creating anything in the world that you can set your mind to. And before we end, make a commitment to yourself of one thing you want to create. Something that may take a week or a month or a year. Something that if you keep taking steps towards, will change the course of your life for the duration that you're on this planet. From a place of conscious choice and intention. And bring your awareness back to your breath. And with your next inhalation, gently open your eyes. I always hear people that kind of tune in when we're meditating and they just see us with our eyes closed, so they think it's funny.
Thank you so much for joining us today on our weekly webinar. As a reminder, we are going to be going to a summer schedule for the weekly webinar. So for the month of June, July, and August. June and July, it will be the third Tuesday. And for August, it will be the fourth Tuesday, where we will be joining you again for a weekly webinar. Also, as a reminder, registration is open for our couples weekend intensive. All right, so our couples weekend intensive, we are opening up more slots for couples. We are going to be able to accommodate 12 couples for this upcoming one. It was September 9th through the 12th. And
we have some really great footage from the last weekend, and we'll be publishing that shortly. So it's really cool to hear the experiences of the people who got to be on the weekend and how it transformed them as people and as a relationship.
Absolutely. So mark your calendars, save the date, September 9th through 12th, and then look for registration, because those spots are going to fill up very quickly. So, and
if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, then you'll get a reminder when we go live.
Absolutely. Right. And also hitting the get a reminder for the Facebook Live as well. All right.
The bell. Is that the bell?
It's the bell. I think you hit the bell. Yes, Eric. Eric had a great weekend experience. Thank you for that vote of confidence there, Eric. Absolutely. Everyone should definitely experience it. It will take your relationship to the next level. Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.